Hey guys, we're doing page 487, 1 through 22 right now. I'm just gonna do the odds like normal, so we'll just jump in right here. So starting with number one, I already got it on the board. It says this thing times this thing equals 0. So how do you get, if you have two things multiplied together and the answer is 0, well, what do we know about at least one of these two things? What do you have to multiply to get 0? 0. So one of these two factors has to be 0 for this to work. So the question for us is, what x value could I use to make this first factor into a 0? What x value could I put right there to turn this whole thing into a 0? What minus 2 equals 0? The answer is 2. So 2 is one of the possible answers. Now, if I plug in x is 2 for this term, 2 minus 2, I would get 0. If I plug in 2 over here, I'd get 2 plus 4 is 6. Doesn't really matter what I get on this one because 0 times anything is 0. Okay, so if I can get one of these factors to turn into a 0, I got an answer. So x is 2 is one of the answers. So the second answer will come from this right here. What x could I plug in to make this factor into a 0? So what plus 4 is 0? And the answer to that would be negative 4, which is the opposite of 4, right? Negative 4 plus 4 is 0. So that would also give me a possible answer. So there's not really any work to do on these. You just ask, what x could I plug in, could I use to make this first parentheses a 0? What x could I use to make the second parentheses a 0? And those are the two answers, and that is all. Okay, number 3, a little bit different. It says 2z plus 7. Whoops. Equals 0. Okay, I'm going to start with the same. So this means 2 times z plus 7 equals 0. So if this turns into a 0, 0 times whatever this is will be, that'll work. Or if this turns into a 0, 0 times whatever this is will give us 0. So it's still two factors. So let's start with the one we've done already, z plus 7. So what plus 7 equals 0? That would be negative 7. So z equals negative 7 is one of our possible answers. So if I plug in negative 7 right there, negative 7 plus 7 is 0. This would be 2 times negative 7, which is negative 14. Negative 14 times 0. Okay, it works, right? 0 would be the answer. So anyway, just like the last one, when you have parentheses, what would make the parentheses 0? Okay, this one is new. What would make 2z equal to 0? Well, if z were just 0, because 2 times 0 is what? 0. And 0 times 0 plus 7, doesn't matter what this is 0. So if there's a z or an x or whatever out here in front, 0 is going to be one of your answers. So this one is negative 7 and 0. Okay, there's not really an order to the answers. I just wrote it out like that. Number 5. Okay, number 5 is like 1 and 2 combined. It says 8x, x plus 1, x minus 10. Notice that on all these problems that we've done so far, it's equal to 0, and you kind of have to have that for these tricks to work. So this one I see 3 factors, 1, 2, 3. We can think of those as 3 different things. If any of these is 0, the whole thing's going to be 0, because 0 times whatever, 0. Same idea. So what are my answers going to be? I'm going to go backwards here. Starting over here, 10 would make 10 minus, that would make 10 minus 10, which is 0. So 10 would work. What plus 1 is 0? Negative 1. Okay, so just the opposite. What's the opposite of positive 1? Negative 1. Negative 1 plus 1 is 0. And then if there's an x out here, outside the parentheses, 8. What would make 8? What would make 8x 0? Well, if x were 0, because this would be 8 times 0, which is 0. Make everything else 0, so 0 is the third answer. So this one does have 3. So however many factors you got is basically how many answers you're going to get normally. If there's a repeat like x plus 1, well, you're not going to write -1 twice. It only works once. So generally, the number of factors gives you the number of answers. Okay, number 7, I'm going to have to erase. Going to 22 on this one, I think. Yep. All right. Number 7. Okay, this is new. This is not like the... Actually, the new number 6 is like 7. So you're going to have to... Usually they do the odd and then the falling even's the same, but on this one, 6 has a similar problem. So anyway, 7, 4b plus 1, 3b plus 2. Okay, can you guys tell what's different on this problem? Well, there's a number in front of the b on both of those. So that's going to make our work a little harder. I can't just use, like, okay, if that had been b plus 1, then b could be -1, and that would make the first term a 0. That's not going to work because of that 4. If I plugged in -1, yeah, it just wouldn't work. So what I need is to get this to be a -1. And how do I get 4b to be a -1? Well, you divide by 4. So really what we need b to be is -1/4. So I know that's confusing, but here's the pattern. If there's a number on the front of the letter, it's always going to be a fraction, okay? So let's erase that 4 for a second. In this case, b would have been -1. But now that there's a 4 in front, the answer is actually -1/4. Okay, do you guys see how I did that? It's, instead of just being -1, it's -1/4. So that's our first answer. Okay, so same thing on this one. There's a number in front of the b. So if that had been what it said, the answer would be b could be -2. But since there's a 3 over in front, it's -2/3. So it's just -2/3. Okay, now guess what would happen if they put a minus right there? Well, if that had been a -2, the answer would have been +2/3. So you have to switch the signs, just do the opposite like we've been doing. So anyway, that is number 7. So number 6 is like that on one of the answers. 6 has a fraction, and 8 is just like number 7. Number 6, I don't know why they put that. 6 is kind of the hardest in that section. It has 3 answers, but if you know how to do 7 and 5, and you should know how to do 6. All right. Anyways, let's jump to number 9 here. Okay. Number 9, they're actually going to make us do some work. Y squared okay, so we still got this equals 0 over here. It says solve by factoring. Factoring was like a couple chapters ago, I think. Hopefully you guys recall. Was that right before spring break, maybe? Remember that this is 3-term factoring. We set up 2 parentheses. Okay. The factoring chapter, we didn't have an equals. We didn't have an equation. We just had this part. We didn't have this part over here. So how do I factor that? So what we said was, if there's 3 terms, we say what can go into y squared, what times what equals y squared, and we're going to put that in the front. Okay, what multiplies to y squared, that's going to go in the front. So that the answer is y times y. So I'm going to put a y and a y. Okay, for the last part, now if there is a number in front of the y squared, that makes this a lot messier. But if there is no number in front of the y squared, we say what, for the back part, we say what multiplies to give us 9 that could add up to 6. So what times what equals 9? Well, 3 times 3 or 9 times 1. But 3 and 3 are what add up to 6. So what we did was we put positive 3, positive 3. Okay, now that we've factored it, and that's the end. If we FOIL this together, guess what we'll get? This thing. We're not FOILing, we're stopping here. Now that we've factored, we get a problem that looks like number 1. Okay, it's got this times this equals 0. So we're going back to the question we asked on number 1. What y value would I need to make this into a 0? And that would be a negative 3. Okay, what y value would I need to make this a 0? Same thing. So negative 3 is what they call a double root. It's not really important right now, but there's only one answer for 9. Because these are the same, you're only going to get one answer. And that would be it. If you plug it back into the original equation, you'll get that you should get that this works. So negative 3 squared is 9. 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. 9 minus 18 plus 9 is 0. Anyway, that's the answer for 9. Okay, jumping to 11. Let's erase all this. Okay, on number 11 it says x squared minus 9 equals 0. Alright, this was a different kind of factoring. I called this a square minus a square. Okay, it's kind of like it's missing that middle term. It's just two terms. It's something squared minus something squared. So what we did, by the way, I didn't go over it because it wasn't one of the problems, but the first factoring method we learned was I called it take stuff out. The book usually said factor out of the monomial. Okay, I just called it take stuff out. That means something can be divided out of both of these on those kinds of problems. This is not one of those problems. This is the last kind of factoring we learned, a square minus a square. So it's kind of the same as what we've been doing. There's just, it's a little different. What times what goes into x squared? That goes in front. And what times what goes into negative 9. Now to get a negative 9, you need a positive 3 and a negative 3, right? And that's how these always work. They will always be, we call them conjugates, like they're the same, except for one's a minus, one's a plus in the middle. That's how square minus squares always work. But you can use those same questions. What can multiply to get that? X and X. What can multiply to get negative 9? Positive 3 and negative 3. And the thing about conjugates, when you do the outside inside, the middle term cancels out. So that's why there's only two terms up there. Anyways, if you use the same questions as 9, you should get the right answer. Okay, now, we're not done. The question, unlike 2 chapters ago, we can find out what x actually could be. Well, what x value would make this into a 0? Because remember, we're trying to say this times this equals 0, so what would make this a 0? Well, what plus 3 is 0? Negative 3. And what minus 3 is 0? Positive 3. So those are the two answers. You guys might recall another way of writing it. Okay, that's not going to happen very often on this assignment, but you could write it like that also. Yeah, and if you plug those in, negative 3 squared or positive 3 squared, both give you a 9, and 9 minus 9 is 0. So that works. Okay, 13, same section. A squared plus 5a minus 36 equals 0. Okay, so it's a 3 term, so it's going to be a lot like number 9. Going to do 2 parentheses. Okay, what goes in front is the same thing as what goes into a squared. A times a. Okay, what goes in back? What times itself, or not times itself, what times what equals negative 36? Now, if you don't know your times tables, you just have to use your calculator and kind of guess. Because it's a negative 36, you know one of them has to be negative. So like 6 times negative 6, that would work. But those don't add up to 5. 12 and negative 3, those don't add up to 5. What else goes into negative 36? Kind of skipping around the answer. It's in your times tables, 9 times 4. Okay, one of them's negative, and I need them to add up to 5. So if I do 9 and negative 4, 9 minus 4 is 5. So I need a positive 9 and a negative 4. So plus 9, negative 4. However, the final answers are not 9 and negative 4. It's a plus 9. We need that to equal 0. So what a do I choose to make this 0? What plus 9? Negative 9. What a value would make a minus 4 0? What minus 4 equals 0? That would be a 4. Okay, so those are the two answers for 13. And that's the last problem on 13. Now, the last section is just kind of like the weird ones. So it is the hardest because it's got the most tricks. But all right, 15, x squared minus x equals 0. All right, well, how can we factor that little thing? Well, I mentioned this earlier. We haven't used it today, but there's kind of 3 ways of factoring. There's square minus a square, that was like number 11. There's the 3-term factoring, that was 9 and the last problem we just did. And there's also the first way we learned, take stuff out. Remember when we did that chapter, you should always check first, can I take something out? And on this problem, there's something that can be taken out of both of these, x. We can divide both of those by x, no problem. So what we did was we put that on the outside of the parentheses, one set of parentheses, and we said what's left after I divide both of these by x. It's kind of like reverse engineering on the distributive property. Instead of multiplying it together, we're breaking it apart. So I'm dividing both of these by x and putting that in here. What's x squared divided by x? X. Minus, okay, a lot of people put nothing over here. What's x divided by x? How many x's go into x? 1. Anything divided by itself is always 1. Okay, so that's how it factors. Okay, this 15 looks a lot like number 3, I guess, is a close example. So, what x value would make this parentheses 0? What minus 1? That would be 1. Okay, but since there's an x out here kind of by itself, if this were a 0, 0 times all this stuff, that would also equal 0. So remember, if there's an x outside the parentheses, 0 is one of the answers. Okay, and if you plug both of those into the original, you'll see that they both give us the 0. All right, number 17. Okay, c squared equals 7c. All right, this is unlike every problem we've done so far. What's different? Well, all the other problems that we've done so far have had a 0 at the end. Okay, and that's what we need so we can use this trick of saying, well, if these two multiply to 0, then I just need to make that into a 0. So we need a 0 over here. So how do I make that happen? I get rid of 7c, and I can get rid of 7c by subtracting 7c. But whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. It's the rules of algebra, right? So on the left side, I have c squared minus 7c. Do those mix at all? No. They're not like terms. What do I have on the right side? 0, which is what I wanted. Now it looks like every other problem, well, it looks like the other problems we've done. Now it looks the most like number 15. Okay, this is not 3-term. This is not a square minus a square. It's a square minus something that's not squared. But I can take something out. I can take a c out of both of those. You need to check, really the order you should check is, can I take something out first? And then after that, is it 3-term? Is it a square minus square? That's what comes next. So I can take a c out of both, just like, kind of like the last problem. If I take a c out, what is left? Remember, when I'm taking something out, I'm actually dividing it out. There would be a c left there, and 7c divided by c is 7. Okay? What value could I put in for c to make this a 0? 7. And for this one, 0. Okay, anything outside the parentheses makes 0 one of the answers. So it's very similar to 15. All right, 19. Okay, we're getting close. 2 left. X squared minus 10x equals negative 16. Okay, what do you guys think we should do first on this one? Okay, same problem as last time. We need this to be a 0 over here. How do I get rid of negative 16? Add a positive 16. So I'm going to plus 16. That's not going to mix with these two. So it's just going to be x squared minus 10x plus 16 equals 0. Okay, now it's normal. Now it's like number 9. So I'm going to factor. I can't take anything out of all three of these. Okay, 2 comes out of both of those, but not this one. X comes out of both of those, but not this one. It's just a normal 3-term. So what goes in front? X and X. What goes in back? What two things multiply to 16 that add up to negative 10? 16 is 4 times 4. That doesn't add up to negative 10. What else? 8 and 2. But 8 and 2 add up to positive 10. So we need them to be negative 8 and negative 2. Because two negatives can multiply to a positive while still adding up to a negative. So it's negative 8, negative 2. Remember, we're not done. We got to figure out what x could be. So if x minus 8 is one of the factors, what x value could make this into a 0? So we can get 0. What x value? 8. What minus 2 equals 0? 2 minus 2 is 0. So 2 is another possibility. So 8 and 2. All right, last one. 21p squared equals 2p plus 24. All right, same problem. I want this side to be a 0. Technically, I could move p squared to the right, but it'd be negative, and that's going to confuse us. So let's move everything to the left. So I'm going to subtract 2p and subtract 24. So I got p, and they don't mix over here on the left side. P squared minus 2p minus 24, and there's nothing left on this right side. That's what we're going for, so that's 0. All right. Just like the last time, it's a 3-term. It's p squared and 2p and 24. So what goes into p squared? That's going to go in front. P, and what goes into negative 24? That adds up to negative 2. So maybe negative 8 and 3, negative 12 and 2, negative 6 and 4. Those are some of our options, almost all our options. Which of those would add up to negative 2? Well, negative 6 plus 4 is negative 2. So, okay, remember, this is not the final answer. If you gave me this, I'd have to take like half off, which stinks because you did the hard part. The easy part is the end. So p minus 6, so what could p be? 6, positive 6, and negative 4. Let's put it over here. There you go. All right, that's all for this assignment. Good luck. Let me know if you need any help.